You have found the Lines Injury Podcast here with Stephen Andress, managing editor of thelines.com, joined each and every week by the Lines Injury Expert Will Carroll at Injury Expert on Twitter. Let's hop right into this, Will. We have big news here in the betting market for week number 3. The Los Angeles Chargers and Justin Herbert with that rib cartilage situation. The line was 7 all week, kind of straddling between the look ahead of 9 and what it would be if Herbert didn't play. We get news that he is not throwing in practice today, that it's a pain management situation. They don't just want him to be able to throw, but be able to throw well. And the market has exercised its opinion because now this spread is back down to Chargers -3.5, -4 at spots. It looks like it's settling around 3.5. So give us the details of what you know about this injury situation with Justin Herbert. Keep in mind, this is the same medical staff and the same doctor on the staff still that punctured Tyrod Taylor's lung by mistake.
Yeah, and guess what he would need to have if he's going to play this week? He would need to have an injection in virtually the same spot. That's not going to inspire a ton of confidence in me. I mean, yes, I know qualified doctor and all, but Herbert was there for that. That's basically what gave him his start. So I don't know, maybe he feels indebted to him a little bit. I still would have a hard time doing it. I mean, first, it's a big needle. It's not any fun. Second, rib cartilage is really, really a painful injury. If you've ever dealt with a broken rib, you would rather have that. Costochondritis, intercostal strains, which is the muscle rather than the cartilage. This is basically, if you've ever ordered barbecued ribs and that membrane that you take off it, that's essentially what's damaged here. So it's a difficult one. It's only going to hurt Herbert if he, breathes or gets hit. So I don't know how he's going to get around this. I have a hard time imagining he is going to play just a week after it, but he played through it, and he certainly didn't have an injection then. It's just going to come down to, can he throw, can he move, and how bad is it going to be if he takes a hit? And I don't think they have any judge of that. They're not going to knock him around in practice. This is going to come down to, how does he feel? How confident is he in this? How confident is he in his line? And then when we get back to the line, then we have to say, what's the difference between Justin Herbert and Chase Daniel? Pretty big. I mean, Daniel's been kind of the journeyman great backup, the guy you want as a backup, but certainly not as a starter. I would say he's roughly comparable to what we saw in Tyrod Taylor because they're basically the same guy. So I think this is a situation where we're going to go right up to game time. I don't think the Chargers are going to rule him out early, but I think they know now. We're just not going to know until they do it. And I think they're going to give him every chance to go up to that line and be able to back off. I just can't see a way he plays this week.
So this could potentially be another situation we're looking at next week, Will. So what can you tell us about kind of recovery timeline for something like this? If you had to guess right now with what you know about the injury and the team situation and the doctors, would you be surprised if he's out again next week?
No, this is all going to come down to how quickly does this heal? How quickly does he get back to a point where he's going to be functional and where he's not going to hurt it more? A cartilage fracture is not exactly like a bone fracture, but the healing times tend to be the same. So don't think about the healing times because players come back. We talked about Dak Prescott a couple of weeks ago. He could be back pretty soon, next couple of weeks. That thumb isn't going to be healed, in the sense of, the fracture is completely sealed back up. That's not going to be the case. Same thing here. It's a question of how much pain is he in, how much damage could he do or sustain on another hit like what he had. Every quarterback is one play away from being out. But with this, what the risk is. For some people, that's a plus. They understand the risk. They accept the risk. They'll go out there and play in pain, or they'll take the needle and play a little numb. I just don't know where Herbert's going to be, and their season is too important to risk him in this first week unless they're just absolutely sure. And I haven't seen the indication that they are.
Chargers at Texans on the look-ahead line is Chargers -7 for week number 4, just for reference for everybody. We got another...
And we have to take into account the opposition as well, Steven. Sorry to jump in there.
No, it's okay.
But the Texans aren't a good team. They're not expected to be a good team. They tied the Colts in week 1, and I think that was telling for both teams. I just think it's not a bye week. I mean, the Texans are a real team, and they've got some big hitters on the defense. I think you have to take into account the opposition, whether they're good, whether they're bad, whether they've got the kind of guys who are going to come in and make life difficult on Herbert. If you've got like a great defense, if you're facing TJ Watt and he was healthy, that might make me very reluctant to put my banged up quarterback out there.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Hey, in case you guys haven't been able to figure it out just by listening to Will right now, he's pretty good at this. He's been doing it for a long time, 20 plus years. He is the author of the new book, The Science of Football, which is available wherever books are sold now. His 4th book. Will also currently the director of bioanalytics for North Star, a sports science startup company. And we have another quarterback injury to talk about here, Will, this week. It is Jameis Winston of the New Orleans Saints, who, if you hear the injury and you're not used to injuries, you say, oh my God, what's he doing playing out there with 4 fractures in his back? So tell us, what exactly does that mean, and how much does it affect his play as a quarterback?
Not much. That's the thing. You hear broken spine, broken back, and immediately we start thinking paralysis. We start thinking how dangerous that could be. This is true, but this is not what this is. What he's done is he has fractured at 4 levels, so it's significant, but he's done the same thing at 4 levels. Basically, the spinal column is a bunch of vertebrae stacked up with the nerve running up a tunnel between them. Off the back are these small little spiny-looking things. They're in a V, and they essentially function as a crumple zone. It's going to hit those transverse processes before it hits the spinal column itself, before it gets to the nerve. So you want all the protection you have. So it's like a crumple zone on a car. Those will basically snap off in some cases, or just break to take some of the cushion.
Well, if I could jump in just real briefly here, I want to make sure I'm kind of picturing this correctly. I'm almost kind of like picturing miniature spines on the back of a stegosaurus.
Yeah, exactly. It's a V. So if you have a circle here, I wish I had a spinal leg. It looks like this, where they're coming off the end of them. If you look at the column, I have a link to what it looks like. And so that's basically what it is. It just comes in and bashes that. A couple of years ago, I want to say it was 2015, Cam Newton was in a car wreck. He got rear-ended, and he had a couple of these transverse processes that were fractured. So he played through it. Again, this is a situation where there's probably some painkillers involved, but he really can't hurt it more. They're confident it's going to heal up. So he played through it last week, didn't seem to have any problems. It's amazing what some of these players will play through. It's amazing that we get, the same kind of injury from NFL hits as we do from a car crash. But that's really what we're facing. So with this, broken back, true, but not what we normally think of. These are tiny little fractures that shouldn't affect his function.
Okay. And as we sit here on Friday afternoon, about 3:15 Eastern time as we record here, the Saints are -2.5 road favorites at Carolina this week. This number has gone off the opening number of 3, so there's been a little bit of early money here on Carolina to get off that key number of 3. Full disclosure, I bet Panthers early in the week at +3, but if you listen to the Megapod, you will hear as the week has gone on, it has been the side that I have grown less and less confident about with the news of what Will is telling me about Jameis Winston's back and his functionality in this, and also just Baker Mayfield being poor as a completely healthy quarterback. So you can listen more to the breakdown there on the Megapod on the YouTube channel if you happen to be watching us live on Twitter right now. The other injury in this game is Alvin Kamara. We continue to monitor his ribs and whether or not he's going to play. Will, we talked about this a couple times, but just briefly in case anybody missed it, what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, bruised ribs. Again, this is a pain tolerance issue. Can he go in there and take the hits? That's the big question for me. And I don't see them rushing him back again. I think they'll take every chance for him to either say, I can't do it, or I can do it. They'll take it right up to game time. If he plays, I expect him to play normally. They won't play him if it's limited. I don't think, pitch counts or those kind of things are really going to affect it. Also, on the other side, remember we had a limited practice designation on Christian McCaffrey. I'm not concerned about that this week. I'm concerned about what it tells us for the long term. They said he didn't have an injury. He was just feeling stiff. That's worrisome to me because it's early in the season. He's obviously been a little bit injury plagued over the last couple of seasons. And if he's having problems without, some sort of external force, if he's just kind of having that, general fatigue, especially in an area that he's had previous injuries, that's worrisome to me. It's one of those sell high, get out kind of things.
The latest information in terms of what they put on the injury reports is Christian McCaffrey was removed from the injury report on Friday, so he will play. But again, that doesn't fall into what Will's talking about here in terms of just long-term productivity and being able to stay healthy all season. So we'll see whether that becomes an issue or not. As for Alvin Kamara, last week he started limited participant, then back-to-back DNPs, and then was ruled out, didn't play. This week, back-to-back limited participations, and then the beat reporters are saying he was on the field again today on Friday for the open media portion of practice. Whether or not that's going to be a full participation or a limited, we'll see. But already doing more in practice this week than he did last week when he was ruled out. So it seems like he's got a much better chance to play this week.
It's definitely positive. But remember, they're not going to test those ribs. He's not in there taking hits. Maybe he did a little bit on Wednesday. They tend to do those early in the week so that he has time to recover or that they know earlier. So I think this is, again, going to be a real game time decision. Much more positive. I think if Kamara plays, he plays normally. And that's obviously a really good thing for the Saints.
We're going to talk about Trey Lance here, but that doesn't affect a spread. So we're going to save that until the end of the show here and circle back to the situation with Trey Lance and the possibility that he could actually come back and play this season. We'll break that down. Also want to mention that if you're watching us on YouTube, you can hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Let us know in the comments who you are betting on in week number 3, what injuries you are monitoring. And of course, always the best sportsbook bonus offers and promos down in the description as well. Let's head back to your neck of the woods, Will, the Colts wide receivers. And we were surprised to see Michael Pittman downgraded middle of the week last week with a quad injury. Weren't really sure about his status. Turns out they hold him out, and it was a big impact. They don't really have anybody behind him. Alec Pierce was also out last week. Their de facto, I guess, number 2 receiver as a rookie. Again, not much talent behind Michael Pittman. This was after you reported, and the other beat reporters in Indy mentioned as well, that they had harder than usual, more physical than usual practices last week with Frank Reich, and then they completely lay an egg against Jacksonville. Well, congratulations. You're 0-1-1, and now the Kansas City Chiefs come to town. And these guys are still on the injury report. Shaq Leonard looks like he's not going to play despite the full participations again.
Yeah, he's out.
Yeah, he's out.
They ruled him out.
Michael Pittman is, I think, limited this week. We'll see how effective he is. What's your analysis here of a quad injury for a top wide receiver?
Yeah, this is tough, and we didn't get much of a look at him in practice this week. The reports were mixed on how he was moving, and that's what I'm concerned about. Is he still limited? Something more happened. I think there was a setback of some sort on Friday, and that's why they ruled him out so quickly. We don't normally see that. And for it to flip back to, even as a limited practice, I think that one just doesn't read right to me. There's some piece of information we're missing there, and I'm just not sure what it is. The Colts are doing this early out thing this week. Or this year, which they haven't done before. I'm a little bit curious about that. They ruled Shaq Leonard out again this week. He's still having trouble moving. He's coming off back surgery. It was designed to help his ankle. You can go back and watch. I think it was the Week 1 podcast. We do have some breaking news here as we record with Michael Pittman. Frank Reich has said within the past hour he is, quote, ready to go Week 2 against the Colts. But again, that doesn't answer our question about how close he is to 100%. That's about what he said last week, though. So I think this is a situation we'll have to watch. I'm not confident. I'm not confident that offense to begin with. Nobody stepped up. I think the other factor here is Alec Pierce. We didn't see a lot of him in week 1 because he had the concussion, was out in week 2. He has been cleared, so he'll be back. But nobody stepped up. There was no Paris Campbell. There was a couple of the guys, but the tight ends vanished. Naheem Hines vanished.
Yeah, they had Ashton Doolin playing wide receiver and major snaps last week. I mean, it was rough. It was practice squad guys for a lot of other teams.
Exactly. So I want to see what changes. Getting Campbell back, getting Pierce back help, but I don't believe in this offense. So looking at that line, looking at their competition, I don't care if it's their home opener. There's going to be a lot of Chiefs fans in there. It's not a bad drive over, and that's where the ticket prices have been moving. So it'll be interesting to see. I just have no confidence in Campbell whatsoever right now.
Yeah, when this was 7, I don't want to tell
not Campbell either.
Yeah, fair. I want to be fully transparent with the way I bet these games with people, and it's not only what I bet, but when I bet it. So I bet the Chiefs as a teaser leg down to -1 earlier in the week, and I was wrong about the line movement on this because Sharp Money came in and has bet this down from 7 all the way down to the dead zone of 5.5. Now, I do think that doing more analysis as the week went on, it makes sense to me why this happened, to move back towards the Colts. They were completely banged up last week, and this line moved from 3.5 on the look ahead all the way out to 7. I think you just have to draw a line through that game against Jacksonville with how many bodies they were missing. But we still don't know how effective they will be fully healthy against a good Chiefs team after what they put on the field week 1 against the Texans. And the Chiefs have looked, to me, improved on defense, most importantly, from what they were bottom of the barrel last year in terms of advanced metrics like EPA and success rate. They're now middle of the road through 2 weeks after having to play Kyler Murray and Justin Herbert. Solid competition there for that defense. And of course, the offense is yet again top 3 across the board in some of these advanced metrics, despite losing Tyreek Hill. So I think if you're going to upgrade the Colts for having some bodies back this week, you'd be silly not to also upgrade the Chiefs for being closer to what they were a couple of years ago versus some of the concerns we saw defensively last year.
Remember, it's a long week as well for them.
Yeah. Wow. Another great point, Will, that you're getting Andy Reid with extra time here to prepare for an opponent, which has been close to unbeatable in his career as a head coach and the future Hall of Famer. So absolutely another great point there. All right.
The part that worries me about what I saw from the Colts last week was that the line didn't pick things up either. Normally,
that old line is not playing as well as expected. Not even close.
No. Raymond is out, who's their a 3rd-round pick. He's played in both games in place of Pryor, so they'll have to go with that. Quentin Nelson has looked lost. Ryan Kelly has been blitzed out of his mind. So Matt Ryan hasn't got a chance to show. I just, again, no belief whatsoever in this offense. You can put bodies back in there. If you watched the Tampa Bay game last week, and probably again this week, they didn't have Mike Evans for most of the game. They didn't have Julio Jones, but they kept finding people. I mean, they were down to Scotty Nelson, or Scotty Miller, excuse me. So it was a situation where guys picked up, where Tom Brady can make their guys better. That certainly wasn't Matt Ryan in week 2.
Yeah, I just think there's a big range of outcomes in this game that includes a Chiefs blowout still. I think the range of outcomes for a Colts upset win is smaller, considering that we just don't know. I mean, everything we're basing on Colts optimism here is based on preseason expectations. And listen, what I love about our staff is that you get opinions on all sides. And one of our best handicappers, Eli Hershkovich, who only has 1 loss on the season through 2 weeks, is on the Colts this week. But he got him at a better number at 7. I'm not sure he would bet him in the dead zone at +5.5. But go read his article and his bets for this week if you want to hear the Colts side and the optimism on this. But suffice it to say that our staff is pretty split down the middle on what to do with this line as it sits here at 5.5. I need to see it from the Colts first before I get more optimistic. I think that there are certainly plenty of opponents on their schedule that they have enough talent to go out and beat and cover some spreads. But we're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs here, and I'm not sure I can get to that point.
No, not for me. I don't think the bodies they add back are enough. Even at 5.5, I like it.
Fair enough. All right, the San Francisco 49ers are in an interesting spot here with Jimmy Garoppolo now the quarterback, and George Kittle is still an issue for them. He's been dealing with a groin injury as they get ready to go. Sunday Night Football, I believe, for this one in Denver against Russell Wilson, so a great matchup there. Groin injury, again, still for George Kittle. They've been cautious with him. What do you know, and what do you expect?
Yeah, I got a report yesterday from a source of the 49ers who said that he's moving better. He's having much more he's able to make the hard cuts. Kittle, that is. Garoppolo's been moving fine as much as he is. But that groin strain was really keeping Kittle from doing two major things. First, getting those quick starts, and he's so much quicker than most tight ends, even with his size. Second, he didn't have a stable base to be able to block, and he does that a lot better than a lot of tight ends. So if you can't do those two things, you can't play. This week, moving better, making hard cuts, making some stops, blocking guys in practice. He should be back at practice today on the West Coast. I think we're going to see his season debut, and I think we have to consider him normal. I don't think they would risk it. They could have pushed him out there last week and didn't. This is a conservative medical staff from the Niners. They tend to hold people back if it's right on that edge. You can see they've got some of the highest questionable numbers, guys who play or don't play. So I think this is one of those things where Kittle has healed up. Those 2 weeks off have helped him, and now he's going to go back to being George Kittle. For me, I think that's a plus. I don't think the line reflects it fully yet. If you can catch that on Friday versus where it's going to be after he practices today. Where's that at right now, Steve?
It has flipped from the Broncos to be a small favorite earlier in the week to the Niners to be a small favorite now at -1.5 across the board.
That's not bad. I think a lot of that is people went back and took a look at the film and see that Russell Wilson was completely out of sync. So I think that's more on the Broncos and figuring out that George Kittle is going to be back. Difference maker. This is one of those where I think there is an advantage if you understand that Kittle's back, and when he's back, he's going to be George Kittle. He's not going to be, play count. He's not going to be limited. They wouldn't let him back there if he wasn't near 100%. So, while there's always some recurrence risk, I really like the addition there, especially for Jimmy Garoppolo. They know each other. They like each other. They like to play catch. So I really like Kittle this week, and I like that for the Niners a lot.
Keep in mind, Kittle didn't practice week 1. This week, he has been posting limited participations. And as we were speaking about George Kittle now, beat reporter David Lombardi posted that Kittle is again out at practice and, quote, still is moving well. So a very good chance, I think, George Kittle plays on Sunday night and makes his season debut for the 49ers. We'll circle again back to Trey Lance here, but before, let's hit another game here, Will, with the Baltimore Ravens and some interesting line movement here this week, because this line dipped to 2.5 with some concerns, I think, about the injury report for the Ravens, and then maybe some more optimism because now some threes are popping back up on the board. So as we look at this injury report, Lamar Jackson was out on a Wednesday. He came back. He seems fine to me. I'll let you tell me if you disagree. J.K. Dobbins, again, back-to-back full participation at running back. John Harbaugh has been saying that they have a plan, and he's pretty close to playing now. We'll see whether or not that is this week. Calais Campbell was a DNP on Wednesday, but returned to practice. That was just vet rest. Justin Houston, vet rest on Wednesday. Those guys are fine. They're going to play. And some limited participation. Marcus Peters had a vet rest on Wednesday, but limited on Thursday. Ronnie Staley, their tackle, didn't play last week, but back-to-back limited participations. Another couple of corners in their secondary, Brandon Stevens and Demarion Williams, both back-to-back limited participations. So a lot of important names here. Last one I'll mention, Marlon Humphrey, a cornerback with a groin injury, DNP Wednesday, but back to practice on Thursday. So I would describe this injury report in total as positive, that the guys are moving towards playing.
Yeah, exactly. I think the one that's not on there for obvious reasons is Steven Means. He's out for the season after rupturing his Achilles. I think that one's going to affect them more. It's great that everybody is moving towards back. I'm not worried about Lamar Jackson at all. But not having Means in the middle, I think is going to be problematic for him. He's the kind of Mike that goes box to box, side to side, and can really get after a quarterback. He can make mistakes go away. He can make offenses make mistakes. Really underrated linebacker. I think his absence is going to cost them. The other thing, in listening to you go through that, let's talk about what limited participation means, because I don't think everybody realizes, like most things in the NFL, these designations have a very specific definition. If you say somebody's limited, that doesn't mean they went through it at half speed. This just means there were sections of practice where they were held out. Whether that's contact, whether that's sprints, whether that's goal line drills, it doesn't matter. If you can't do everything, you're limited, which is why we see it in such numbers. Again, the NFL wants everybody out there to have the same information. Even though we have the same information largely, it's how you use that and put it into your models and be able to contextualize it. Hopefully that's what we're doing for you here. I think all those positives on the Ravens are kind of counteracted by losing Means, and we'll have to see whether that defense, with a new coordinator, a bit of a new system, will be able to adjust.
Fair enough. Lastly, let us know what you've heard about Trey Lance. I know you spoke to some sources on this situation. Most expected him to be out for the entire season, but the recovery could be shorter than that. There theoretically is a chance that he could be back on the active roster this season with what you've heard. Yeah,
there's a chance. Cue the Jim Carrey gif. It's one of those situations where I just can't see a first-year second-year starting quarterback who runs a lot coming back after not one but two issues. And let's go through those. First, he broke his leg. That's pretty simple. It's the fibula, which is the smaller of the two bones of your lower leg. It's on the lateral side, and it doesn't bear as much weight. So you can see players come back. Reggie Bush famously came back from that in 5 weeks. So it's possible. They put a plate in there. They pinned it back together. That'll heal. That won't be a problem long term. The bigger issue is what they call that ligament disruption. I don't know why they said it that way. What it was a severe high ankle sprain. There was damage to the syndesmosis, the ligaments that go in between the fibula and the tibia. And they're very thick. They don't move very much for obvious reasons. But what they did was called a tightrope procedure, where they basically took two Kevlar threads to put those back together to hold it in place so that ligament can heal over time. They may have repaired the ligament as well, basically stitched it back together, which is unusual. We do have a great comp for this, though, and that's Tua Tagovailoa. He had not one but two of these. Each ankle is held together by Kevlar. He's had no problems. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but he certainly has some mobility. So in the long term, I don't have concerns for Trey Lance. I think on a physical level, he could come back this season, and I think doctors don't think about the football consequences sometimes. Most of the time, you'll see guys quoted who aren't the team doctor, haven't treated them, haven't had to deal with this. Could you put Trey Lance back on the field? I don't see it. I just don't think the Niners in context will get him back out there, especially if Jimmy Garoppolo is playing well. And if they're already out of it, if that hasn't worked, then there's even less incentive to get him out there. So it theoretically plausible, yes. Likely, no.
Fair enough. Before we wrap up here, I'm just going to do some quick fire updates from the Friday injury report that have been coming in as we've been recording. Raiders wide receiver Hunter Renfrow with a concussion has not practiced the entire week. I would expect him to be out. Mac Hollins would be the next man up there. For the Denver Broncos, Jerry Jeudy, shoulder and ribs back at practice today. Another pain tolerance situation there, you think?
Yeah, I'm more worried about the shoulder. And I talked about this in the column that, they initially said shoulder, then they said ribs. By midweek, it was both. And that's basically what it was. It was a mild AC sprain. So I'm worried about him being able to reach. Is he going to be able to get his arms out there? The last thing he wants a little dinosaur-armed receiver because he's in a harness. So I'm more worried about that. The pain tolerance, he had a guy land on him. That hurts. But there's been no real discussion that he's going to need a shot or anything. So I think Jeudy will be relatively ready to go. We'll see whether or not Russell Wilson is.
And don't forget the Niners are much stronger at corner to start the season now than they were at the end of last year when they had injuries, and they have two top 30 coverage grade corners from last year's PFF stats now on the back end there. Josh Jacobs for the Las Vegas Raiders, back-to-back DMPs with an illness. So I guess it's just a matter of whether he gets well.
Yeah, he's got the flu, flu-like symptoms at least. Unlike baseball, this is basically exactly what you hear. So if you see that he's doing anything tomorrow, they'll probably call this a game-time decision, and it's going to be how he feels. We've all had a cold or the flu and had to go back to work, and maybe you're not 100%. I do think he'll lose some touches on this, but he's so much better, and Carr seems so much more comfortable in the second game than the first. We'll see whether that holds, but losing Josh Jacobs, that's one that would really shift the line, I'm sure.
In case you were hoping that this was the week that Brian Dable would play Kadarius Toney, well, now he's got a hamstring injury and it was a DMP on Friday. So, don't be so optimistic at this point with Kadarius Toney. No reason to be. Gabe Davis for the Buffalo Bills, ankle listed as questionable for week 3. If you listen to the player, he said he's, quote, 100% confident that he will play, but keep an eye on it, something to monitor as well. And lastly, just putting a bow on it, Kamara, Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston for the Saints, all officially listed as questionable. Will, any final thoughts here before we wrap up?
No, I think we've hit the big ones. I think we've seen where it's moving. Make sure you read the column so you get a little bit of more additional context. But I think when you're taking a look at the lines this week, the actual lines, not our website, I think when you're taking a look at it, the movement has been very, very conservative. And I think they're underplaying some of these, especially with Herbert, especially with the defense on the Ravens side. I think there's some opportunities to take the information, contextualize it, work it into your model, and have an advantage based on being able to do that.
Okay, everybody, as always, it's all free content at thelines.com. Be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're watching us here on YouTube. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. Be entered to win a $25 Amazon gift card. Let us know in the comments on YouTube who you are betting on in week number 3. And as Will mentioned, go to the site, go to thelines.com. You can find him on his Twitter feed at Injury Expert. You can find the article as well on my Twitter feed at Stephen Andress and the number 1. And check out his full breakdown of all the major injuries for week 3 to monitor heading into the weekend. Best of luck with your wagers in week number 3 of the National Football League.